Welcome to another episode of our podcast, Impact of AI, where every week we explore how AI is impacting our daily and professional lives. Today, we are absolutely excited. This is going to be such a fun topic. We are absolutely excited to have Josephine Ho with us. She currently works as a customer success engineer with Databricks. Databricks is a data and AI company, and it's really built on this modern lakehouse kind of architecture where it combines a data warehouse and a data lake to offer that open and unified platform for data and AI. However, she is formerly a data scientist with the NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Welcome, Josephine.
Hi, Melissa. It's really great to be here.
So I learned recently that your background, before you ever got into data and data scientist, that you started out in education, and more specifically, you had a master's degree for education and policy. So I think we should go back to the beginning of your journey and understand what motivated you to move away from education and policy into data.
Yeah, I think I actually had quite an untraditional background compared to most people in the tech industry, but I think this is becoming more and more common. But I actually started out wanting to be a teacher and making a difference in the classroom. And then once I got to college, I wanted to make more of an impact. And so I went into education policy. And it wasn't until there when I got fascinated with data. And, back then I had a teacher who told me, we don't have enough data people in the public sector. Everyone's going into the private sector because that's where all the money is at. And so it kind of became my passion to work in data in the education sector. And I was working, interning for Intel, Green Dot Public Schools, which was a charter management organization funded by the Gates Foundation, using data and education, and just really grew my passion in data there. And then eventually I felt like I hit a wall. And so that's kind of where I was like, you know what, I don't care what industry I'm in. I just want to work at the cutting edge of data and pursue things that way, and got out of the education sector.
So then after the working with the Green Dot Public Schools is where you went to work in Hong Kong. Is that kind of where the transition started to take place?
I did go to Hong Kong. My parents lived there, so I had a life transition and a career change. So in Hong Kong, data wasn't a really big booming industry there, and the opportunities weren't there. So I ended up working in communications, but data was always my passion. And so I ended up doing data projects by myself. I created, I saw, one example was, we had a data team in Malaysia who had all our data in the communications team. And then some girl was on the floor was building reports off of Excel and then putting it in a PowerPoint. And that took days to do, communicating with an offshore team, getting the data in the right format, building these reports. And I had used Tableau in my previous job. And so I was like, hey, and so we worked together and kind of built an automated Tableau report, and then automated the whole process, with the Malaysia team. And then the work that took 1 to 2 days ended up taking 15 minutes to refresh the data. So no matter where I went, I kind of kept data with me. And then when I moved back to the States, to LA, I also was like, okay, I want to pursue data even more now. LA, there's a lot of data opportunities, but the data landscape changed so much. I knew I had to refresh my skills, and the quickest way to do that was to do a boot camp.
Oh,
so yeah.
Where did you do a boot camp at?
Yeah, I did a boot camp at General Assembly, and I was really lucky and fortunate to have a really good teacher. And kind of going full circle, that teacher was a teacher at Green Dot Public Schools. So he was a very passionate teacher trying to work in turnaround schools in underprivileged neighborhoods. Eventually he got, pretty tired. Teachers do a lot of stuff and they get really tired. And eventually he wanted to pursue data even more. He started teaching at the boot camp, and he kind of scrapped the whole curriculum and was like, we're not going to learn all this data science on your laptop. We're going to learn, have you run your stuff on AWS instances. We're going to have you push to GitHub. We're going to have you use Docker containers. And so he really taught us all the newest technologies. And I'm really grateful for him because he's really the reason why I was able to then get a job at JPL, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. I think at the time, people were still, thinking boot camps weren't really legitimate and hesitant to hire folks out of boot camp. But because I knew those new technologies, I was able to get my foot in the door.
Wow. I didn't realize those boot camps existed, because I think when we look back at where this was in your career, we're talking what, 2000, end of 2016?
Yes.
Yeah. So even back in 2016, the term data scientist wasn't coined. So when you went to work with NASA, what was your role at NASA? Because I don't think the word data scientist existed back then.
Yeah, everyone had the same title. It was enterprise applications engineer, I believe, but really it could mean anything. And my day-to-day was actually doing, some DevOps, the newer things, but the older things, we also had to do some system administration, which I was fascinated about. I learned so much about the history of technology and computers and everything from going to the data centers. Not a lot of companies have data centers anymore. JPL does. And so I was really able to learn like the history and all the cool things. But once again, like I was passionate about data science and kind of created the opportunity myself. I would do my day-to-day, but then I would also voice to my manager that, I have a data science background. I have an idea for doing a predictive maintenance project, because we deal with systems and systems will go down and we would have to bring them back up again. Sometimes it happens, actually a lot of times it happens off hours and you're on call. Mm-hmm. And I remember waking up, we would take turns on the team who would go on call, waking up in the middle of the night, and I'm like, why don't we do a predictive maintenance project and predict, when a server is going to go down so that we can fix it ahead of time, And so kind of created that pet project myself. Yeah.
So this was, if I remember correctly, this was a you've called it a binary classification machine learning model that predicts when the servers will trigger the alerts.
Yes, we would look at features like CPU usage, memory, if things are about to burst or it's over, if the server's overwhelmed for too long, it might crash. And so we would look at those inputs and then predict whether it's going to fail or succeed.
So then this would give you those alerts before the event would happen.
Yes, that's the idea. We would apply profit to it and try to predict that.
How did that work out? Like, how did that work? Like, what's the end of the story? How did it do?
Yeah, great question. So this is, it really gave me a lot of insight into the problems that a data scientist hits in their day-to-day. And this is the kind of knowledge that helps me now as I work with customers and their data scientists. Mm-hmm. So at the time, just like most data scientists, I was kind of in my rabbit hole trying to do feature engineering, spend so much time, optimizing the model to get the best evaluation score. And the POC part took such a long time, gathering the right data, going to all the different teams to get all the data, cleaning the data, trying to build out that workflow. It took a lot of time. And once I got to trying to productionalize the project and have it apply on real world data, instead of my teeny tiny sample, mm-hmm. That's when I hit problems. I didn't know how to spin up a Spark cluster. It would fail every time I tried to do it. I had to spend a lot of time looking online and figuring it out myself. And it wasn't until I went to Databricks when I learned about, just a few years ago, Google published a white paper about how you can have better performance with using a very simple model with lots and lots of data compared to a finely tuned model with very little data. So most of the success in a data science project isn't in fine tuning your model, it's in the quality and volume of data you get. And so that means your focus and energy should be on the data engineering side and instead of like the model tuning side. And so I realized, that was my experience too. I was having trouble productionalizing the models. And that was where I hit the wall. And now I feel a lot of the pain points that my customers have too. Now what I do today as a customer success engineer is I understand, it helps that I understand the pain points that my customers have. And then I try to, educate them about what's in the industry, what we've learned, how, they should focus on the data engineering side, the data quality, what are the best practices and things like that.
If we look at your role as a customer success engineer, what are the key areas that you focus on?
Yeah, at a high level, our goal is to help our customers be successful on the platform. And how we measure success is we got to be bringing value to them, because we're a subscription-based model. So, they need to find value in using our product. Otherwise, they're not going to use it anymore. And success really is, they're usually one of three things. They're either bringing the business revenue, increased revenue, or decrease cost or decrease risk. And so ultimately, those are the goals we try to achieve. And what that looks like in a day-to-day is, giving workshops to customers, sharing them, giving them demos about new product features, finding best practices and communicating that to them. So it's actually really fun. If you're a learner and you love learning, this role is perfect for you, because your job is to learn and then teach it to your customers.
But I think what I heard earlier in your conversation is that the value and the technology that you learned as a data scientist has really been able to help you facilitate those better conversations. So what I heard was the experience and the knowledge that you bring as a data scientist to your role currently helps you communicate to your customers in a way that everyone can understand it. Without that knowledge, do you think you'd be successful in your role?
I think everyone in my role has to have that real world experience. Otherwise, it's really hard to understand the customer's pain point, understand where the customer's mindset is, or even, their teams. Now I understand a lot of data scientists in my customer accounts, they're used to developing on their own laptops and things like that. And so it's important not just to teach them about Databricks, which is a web-based application, but to explain to them why it's important to get out of the laptop environment, why cloud is the future. That way you can scale and share and collaborate, things like that. So it does make it easier to communicate a point across to my customers.
Okay. I want to take a minute to look back at your journey. Your journey has been at a time when, and still is, we're not seeing a lot of female leads within the data science, data engineer, artificial intelligence, cognitive technologies. How have you been able to adapt to that?
It's definitely something you notice in the field, especially on the journey here. You have the typical, every female in the industry knows those little experiences. It's definitely something you notice, but I do see an improvement over the years and more females entering the space. And I think it's really important to support each other and really make the environment friendly towards females, women, working moms, all types of women.
Okay. Do you have any advice from your previous experience that you can provide to the audience?
Yeah, my personal, what kept me going was the fact that, whenever I did come across obstacles, it kind of fueled me. It's something I think is the reality, unfortunately, is you have to work twice as hard to get just as far. But that's just going to make you better. So I always saw those challenges as good challenges, and it's just going to make me better and learn faster. And I remember even like my background of starting with through a boot camp, and I'm coming up against people who've been in the industry for a long time, people with CS degrees. And I remember, when I did the boot camp, there was only one boot camp in Los Angeles teaching data science. It was in Santa Monica. I lived in Arcadia. If you are from Los Angeles, you will know how terrible that drive is. There's traffic and everything. So
Yeah.
I would wake up at 5 o'clock, actually 4:45. I'll drive at 5, get to Santa Monica at 6. If I didn't leave at that time, traffic could take up to 2 hours. And so I would drive every day. I would listen and immerse myself into podcasts about data science. Then I would spend all day at the boot camp doing data science. My life was living and breathing data science. And that's the kind of stuff I feel like you kind of have to have the drive to do. And it's only going to make you a better person. But of course, don't work yourself like too hard, like you need to take care of yourself too and be able to fight for what you deserve. So I think also being outspoken is important too, know what your worth is and don't be afraid to speak up.
No, I think this is perfect. I hear a lot of passion in your voice when you talk about this topic. So I think your self-motivation has been very easy for you, because you're passionate. You talked about doing things kind of after hours to try to make something, a process work. Even when someone didn't ask for it, you saw that there was an opportunity that could be solved. You saw a problem and you were able to work towards that with collaboration and answer that question. So if we focus a little bit more on what you're doing today, Databricks, they use the term lakehouse architecture. And they're using that term to say that they're taking the best of a data warehouse and the best of a data lake, and they're pulling that into a platform of data so that you can apply that AI technology on top of that. Can you maybe expand a little bit more about this lakehouse architecture that your company references?
Yes, the lakehouse architecture is kind of the future. So what you see now a lot of times is, actually let's rewind back a little bit and talk about the history. So data warehouses, they've been around for like about 40 years or so. They're really great at what they do, but the past 10 years, we're starting to get more unstructured data, all types of, we're starting to do data science. It's not analytics anymore. It's not structured data anymore. And the value is really through those data science types of use cases. Think about clickstream use cases, IoT, fraud detection, all those things. That requires, lots of volume, sometimes unstructured data, and data warehouses aren't really good at those modern types of use cases. So if a lot of people have heard, the term digital transformation. A lot of enterprises and companies, they started to go from data warehouses to data lakes. But the problem there is, data lakes are really just files behind the scenes. And so you don't get those good benefits and qualities of a data warehouse anymore. You don't get that schema enforcement, ACID transactions. And so we're at this point where, we have two systems now. A lot of enterprises, they have a data warehouse and a data lake. Okay. Sometimes, right? And then the data warehouse will support the BI use cases, and then the data lake will support the machine learning data science use cases. Sometimes that data is the same data and they have multiple copies of it. It's just very inefficient. Your data might not be the freshest data. And so the ideal situation would be if you can take the best of both worlds. Mm-hmm. Take the best of a data lake, the best of a data warehouse. And so what you get is a lake house.
That's great. I love it.
It sounds wonderful. How do you do this, right? Everyone could have thought of this. It's a great idea. But the thing is, it's actually technically quite hard to do. And it really wasn't until Delta came about, and Databricks created Delta because we started seeing a lot of customers having these same problems again. Created Delta and then open sourced it. And Delta is really this transaction layer. Without getting too much into the details, it basically brings the qualities of a data warehouse onto your data lake. So it allows your data lake to perform like a data warehouse. And so you get the benefits of a data lake where it's, separation of compute and storage. It's cheap, you can scale. And you can have your data in an open format. At the same time, you get that ACID compliance and schema enforcement and time travel and things like that.
So I don't, if I'm looking at the value and I step back to where I'm at currently today, I'll have multiple instances of data lake and or warehouse where I'm constantly replicating that data. But even then, even with that approach, I think that I'm doing great because I'm taking the data and building it in one area, and then I'm just replicating it in multiple areas. But you're saying that even that replication isn't still getting us what we need today.
Yeah, first of all, you have two systems that are siloed. So that basically that will lead to your data being siloed,
Mhm.
your data being stale, right? One's going to be fresher than the other. Your data is duplicated. And what ends up happening is your teams end up being siloed too. So that's why you get your data warehouse guys and your data lake guys. And in the end, that's really just an environment for an very slow and not so innovative team. And so if you bring everything together and everyone, all your data teams can work on one platform, that's lower total cost of ownership for managing the systems. Your teams are more collaborative and they can work well together, and your data is fresher.
So if I'm a big Fortune 200 company, chances are I've either got one or more of a data warehouse, and probably in the process, I know of some companies who are in the process of building these data lakes. And I think what you're helping us emphasize is that's great that you're migrating from the warehouse to a data lake, but you're going to start to find that there's limitations with that as well. And what you're saying with your company is that you've identified those. It goes back to what exactly what you did as a data scientist. You identified a potential problem that hasn't really been explored yet, and you're going ahead and solving that now. And then your company is focused on communicating and making sure that everyone's educated on that.
Exactly. That's
Oh,
like
okay.
spot on. We do all the work and research to think about what's going to keep us sustainable. What's the vision 10 years down the line? And then, because we want to survive. So that's how we think. And then we communicate that to our customers so they can be successful and grow with us over the next 10 years.
So Josephine, this is great stuff. Do you have any lessons learned or tips that you can provide to all those data scientists that are out there listening?
Yeah, so one thing that not everyone knows about is if you're working in your job, a very valuable resource you have is actually your vendor account teams. So your vendors like AWS, Azure, GCP, Databricks, right? If you work at a company where you have a contract with these vendors, lean on them, it's our job to really learn what's in the industry, what's the future, what are the best practices, what's going to keep your solution sustainable over the next 10 years. And our job is to learn that stuff. And so you could lean on us. A lot of times my job is to deliver workshops, talk about best practices, and I think not enough customers are reaching out to us. So, if you have office hours set up with your vendors, go to them. Talk to your manager about setting up a workshop with your vendors and learn from them so you don't have to do the learning yourself.
So if I'm a customer and Databricks is my vendor, that's great that you've opened the door, but I'm not even sure what questions I should be asking you. Like what questions should I ask? Yeah. I always hear a lot in the industry. I don't know enough to know what I should be asking. So a lot of times in these podcasts, we almost need you as part of our, individual that we're interviewing. We almost need you to help us understand what questions should we be asking.
Yeah, we get that a lot actually. So that's a very common situation. So what I would recommend is reach out to your account team or go to the office hours and then say, hey, I want to learn more. Where can I get started? And we usually have an onboarding process where we can say, hey, this is step one, and then build on that with you so that you're becoming an expert with us. So
Okay.
so I have like an onboarding workshop series, that I can deliver. We also have self-paced trainings that we give to our customers. And so, yeah, we have a lot of resources. Just come and ask us.
If I'm not one of your vendors, like if I'm out there I'm sitting in procurement, so I'm going to put my procurement, supply chain hat on. I'm sitting in procurement supply chain, and I'm looking at AWS and Azure and Databricks, what are the questions I should be asking so that I really understand the differences between what these products are doing? And then what questions should I understand? What do I need to know in order to compare these products so I'm picking the right one?
That's a great question because there's so many pros and cons of each one and so many ways of looking at it. Sometimes it's not as easy as that. It's also, what's existing already and what are your users using already. But I would say if you're in procurement, you're going to want to pick something that's going to last. A lot of times, for example, if you pick a proprietary system, you're locked in. That's not going to be smart for the business long term. So you're going to want to look at the company's values, their visions. I can only speak on Databricks perspective, but we value openness. It's one of our hallmarks. Simple, open, and a lot of our software, like the innovations and technologies that we create, we open source it. Things like Apache Spark, Delta, Koalas, MLflow. We create them and then we open source it because we believe that that's the future. We don't believe in like lock-in and things like that. So you would want to look at the company's values, their vision, really their sustainability. How long are they going to be around for?
I think that's a very good observation. I think even though it might be in its simplest form, it's something that we always forget. I recently worked with a chief procurement officer who was looking at procurement software, cloud-based procurement software. And they had been using this one piece of software for almost 15, 20 years. And they decided it was now time to revisit the market, look at what the market was bringing, and pick a new provider. What was interesting is in the conversation that I had with the CPO, the feedback was, whoever I pick, it's going to be like I'm married to them for the next 15, 20 years. So I want to make sure I want to make the right decision. And more specifically, I'm going to look at the company itself, not the product, because the product will always be innovated on. There'll always be, nuances that come in, features, new capabilities. But if the company is not going to work with me as a partner, if the company is not constantly looking forward and being visionary, then I don't have a lot of confidence in that product over the next 15, 20 years. And I thought that was like I said, it's a very simplistic view, but it's one of the most impactful views that I think we miss when we look at technology.
That is 100% the right way of thinking. Our product is changing all the time. So you want a company that's innovative and do all those things because the product itself is going to change. It's the company vision.
So let's focus back on you, Josephine. You are a woman who has been moving into this technology, data science. You've mentioned some applications that I know some people in the audience are going to be really familiar with. Where do you see yourself going next? Like, you've got a lot of background in technology and cloud and machine learning. Where's the next for you?
I mean, the industry is changing so much. Who knows? It could be a role that doesn't exist yet.
Very good point.
I think that a lot of times there's always this rush to get to the next level, the next step and everything. And especially this industry is changing so much. You're always learning and it can be overwhelming. I feel like I'm at a place where I really enjoy what I do every day. I love the fact that I'm helping people, I'm helping my customers, and I care about my customers. I also get to learn on the job. So I want to do what I do really well instead of like rushing through the process. That's kind of my mentality now, but I would love to be a tech lead. That's there's usually 2 tracks. You can be tech lead or a manager. And I feel like earlier you asked, what's my experience as a female working in the industry? And oh my gosh, how many times I've been pushed into the culture committee and doing all those like things, manager roles. Like, I feel like that's just so typical and there's nothing wrong with that, and there is a lot of value to that, but I kind of want to go against the grain and go the tech lead role.
Oh, that's good. That's good. You mentioned something just a minute ago about potentially a role that may not even exist yet. And I think that's a really interesting observation. So when you look at what you do on a day-to-day basis, and you're recognizing already that there's roles out there that haven't been invented yet, you did in your journey, you took the initiative to go and get the skill sets you needed through the boot camp. But as we continue to move into this, AI, Internet of Things, world, do you think it's always going to be your and you in general, your responsibility to continue to increase your skill sets? Or do you think that the companies that we work for should have some sort of responsibility in that evolution?
I mean, it definitely should be both, ideally.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the responsibility is going to land on you, or at least for you to keep an eye on those opportunities and go for it. But like I started out with, passion in data, which led to, at first it was data and I was doing analytics. And then that led to data science because that was the new and shiny thing and it was interesting. And then I didn't realize at the time, but data science was actually going to be a stepping stone to this customer success role. And so this could be a stepping stone to another role too that I just don't know about. Sometimes you have to get your foot in the door in the industry and then learn about what opportunities are next.
Okay. As we start to wrap up, because it's been almost an hour already, but as we start to wrap up, what are some thoughts that you have for anyone, as a data scientist or anyone wanting to be a data scientist?
I would say that it's really important to be comfortable with change. That's just the new norm now.
Yeah.
And, be flexible with your goals. You start out with data science, see where it leads. Yeah, I would say go for it. The landscape is always changing. So don't think that you need a CS degree and years of experience to get in. This is actually changing a lot. Technology is newer and newer. So get your foot in the door, learn the terminologies, get comfortable with understanding the landscape, get certified, get a AWS Solutions Architect certification or whatever certification. It's okay not to have job work experience
Right.
in the industry, get certified. And yeah.
No, I'm going to follow up because you made a very interesting comment about don't worry about not having a degree. And I'm, I come from a different generation. And, the generation I come from is everyone should have a degree in something. Doesn't matter if it's not the degree you're going to do, but you need to have a degree in something. And I'm noticing that lately that's a very different perspective. It's more focused certification, a focused energy in a particular topic, and not necessarily going out and getting a 4-year degree. So what I think I heard, and I just want to clarify, is that the technology roles around data analytics, the lake house, the warehouse, the cloud technology, the AI, the cognitive technologies, that it's okay not to go out and get a 4-year degree in something. But what you're recommending is find those focused technology certifications and really start there. And then that's going to help you move into your career much more quickly. Is that what I heard?
Yes, I think that the hardest thing is really knowing what to learn. And I would say cloud is one, cloud technology, containerization, and then also knowing just some basic coding. And that's really all you need because the landscape is changing so much. So actually going to a 4-year university might not be the best choice. I actually, when I was in my previous job and we had interns, they were still teaching things that were out of date because schools aren't going to innovate, as their curriculum isn't going to change as quickly as the industry. And so sometimes,
that's a good observation.
Yeah, so do get your foot in the door, get your feet wet, get certified. Whatever certifications are out there, the popular ones, get them, spend it, and then do it. It's possible.
No, that's great.
Yeah, and if you keep at it for 1 year, 2 years, a few years, you're gonna do great.
No, I think this was good. It changes the dynamics of learning, and instead of and I think you've also nailed it pretty quickly, is that our universities and our education system isn't changing as quickly as the industry or changing as quickly as the technology is. So that, yeah, I think that was a really good, observation. Yeah. Okay. Well, we have concluded. We are at the end of our time today. Thank you again, Josephine. This was extremely enlightening for me. I really enjoyed you talking about your journey as a data scientist and providing all the insights and lessons learned that all of us, including myself, are going to be able to reap benefits from afterwards.
Thank you, Melissa. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.